Today we're going to be talking about sacred plants. Thank you so much for being here. This is Professor Matt. Send this video to somebody that you think would find interesting. This is going to be a really high level, and I'm actually going to make multiple videos over the next couple of days. It is the Thanksgiving holiday season, so I'm going to try to get these videos done, kind of in one shot, and then I'm going to upload them over the next couple of days. I'm going to be visiting family, so I hope that you guys have a lovely Thanksgiving dinner. Just as a precursor, fair warning here, I think that Thanksgiving tomorrow, I'm recording this on the 26th, I think Thanksgiving tomorrow is going to be pretty intense, so don't argue with your family or anything. Just ignore any of the drama. That's my little tip to you guys from the astrology of everything. So let's take a look at sacred plants. We're going to talk a little bit about history. We're going to talk about what sacred plants really are. And probably all three of the videos that I make are going to be on the shorter side, just because I'm going to try to jam pack some info into each one and make them shorter so that I can get those videos out each day. But first, if you're looking to learn more from just this video on herbology, sacred plants, I do have herbology and herbalism as a course that I added to my online university, my school. You can go check that out. We've got about 60 people in here. A lot of people are having fun. We post pretty much almost every day. People are asking questions. They're having conversations, higher learning. If being a loner is more of your shtick and you're interested in having really intricate conversations with an AI tool that protects your privacy and gives you a lot of great esoteric details, check out the AI tool that I built called Astraya. It will track your inner alchemy cycle. It'll track your astrology for you on the advanced package. It'll give you, lots of great information. What zodiac sign is on the horizon. The Schumann resonance is crazy this morning. So as you can see, the sun is bright red and the intensity and frequency is high. So it'll even tell you when the Schumann resonance is high, gives you active retrogrades, what day of the week it is, Chinese year, etc. There's a lot of really great features on my app. So it gives you a lot of personalized information. Let's get into sacred plants. So first and foremost, there's going to be a lot of details and data on the screen. Feel free to study that at your own leisure. You can read it, you can pause the video. I'm not going to basically be reading off of this. This is just used as my little walkthrough for my video. The first thing that you need to understand, let's first go through what I would consider the four major names of plant medicines and categories that fall into them. Now, there's going to be obviously a lot more. People do ketamine, people do kratom, right? I don't like a lot of those, and it's for obvious reasons if you've ever used them or if you've ever seen them. I'm also not going to be talking about things like TRT or anything medical like that, because I've already made videos on that. You can go find those on my channel. We're specifically talking about four major categories, all of which I have experience with. That's the way I'll put it. The first being ayahuasca/DMT. DMT is the major contributing chemical that is within ayahuasca. The second would be San Pedro, which is a cactus juice. You've probably heard of people tripping on cactus juice before. That is, the San Pedro cactus is one of those major medicinal plants that are used. Magic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms. There's actually different forms of these. And then cannabis, all of which I think people are constantly asking me questions about. In fact, I'm making this video because somebody just commented last night that they wanted me to make a video about this. So those are going to be the four major plants that we go in on this video. So really what we're talking about here is how those plants interact with our nervous system. I'm going to talk about each one and each category in a second, but let me give you a little bit of basic backdrop. The nervous system is our interconnected superhighway. It is a electromagnetic vehicle that is all throughout our body that communicates information. The way that it communicates information is through neurons, and this nervous system, which is basically, everything is connected to everything. Your brain is connected to your heart is connected to your gut is connected to your genitals. Everything in the spinal column is connected. Your arms are connected to your everything, right? Like when you have a heart attack, or when somebody has a heart attack, their left arm generally goes numb because the heart, It's actually not even that the heart is more on the left-hand side. It is slightly, but that's only because it dips to the left. And it's really because of the main arteries that are flowing outward. You would feel the impact of that in the left arm more than you would the right arm. Anyway, that's just a caveat to it. Everything is interconnected. And our nerves, okay, each neuron communicates through synapses. And each neuron also has dendrites, okay? So you can see here, there's a nucleus, there's an axon. I'll just click on one because it's being a little finicky. There's a nucleus, there's an axon, and then there are these little axon terminals, okay? And then there are these little dendrites, all right? These are like human beings, okay? You've got the nucleus as the brain, the axon as the spine or the body, the terminals here. This is very much so similar to the base of our spine, okay? So the base of our spine is chock full of neurons. That's why our genitals are so sensitive. And we actually ground through the base of our spine. In other words, like sitting on grass and having your feet planted on grass is super healthy. This is called grounding. And what that does is it actually reduces the electric charge that you have in your body by feeding that charge into the earth, which in turn, the earth then gives you stabilizing magnetic energy. And you need both. You need both electrical and magnetic energy within the body in order to be healthy and fully sustained, which is why nature is good for us. But most of that grounding is not done in the brain. In fact, almost none of it is. Most of the grounding is done in the lower parts of the body. So this would include like basically everything from the solar plexus down. The solar plexus is the celiac ganglion of the body, which is in the center part of our nervous system. So basically from the belly button down, this acts as a very different receptacle compared to the brain. The brain is very good at taking information in and recategorizing it. It can also put information out, but the heart is actually better at pushing the toroidal field out. In fact, the heart is the organ which pushes out energy via our toroidal field, our energy field. But the lower nerves are really good for releasing energy, okay? Which, that's exactly what they do when you have an orgasm, right? It releases energy. Well, so the lower part of the body is good for release. The upper part of the body is good for taking in energy and stabilizing the system. Very much similar to a tree, which is why the neurons are, at the end of them, the little things that hold hands with other neurons so that they can communicate, they're called dendrites. Dendrites comes from the term dendritic, right? Which dendritic arborization is a term that refers to the complex branching patterns of dendrites in neurons, crucial for synaptic connectivity and neural function. In other words, dendritic actually and arbor, like Arbor Day, right? So dendrites, arbor, these are all terms that have to do with plants, like trees, like flowers. So what we're really talking about is the study of ethnobotany, all right? All of these different plant medicines come from different cultures. And it's how we've studied these cultures and how we've studied these plants, which has showcased their amazing abilities. So what are those abilities? I'm going to get into a little bit of that today. But one thing I do want to point out is, as I'm mentioning all of these, I'm basically saying, hey, we look like a giant plant. Okay, we look like a giant tree. And it's because we are. If you go and you study ancient esoteric artwork or notes about just like ancient wisdom, they'll say that we as human beings are a combined factor. We are crystal, we are animal, we are plant, we are aquatic, right? Like we house all of the elements within us, and we house all of the other parts of nature within us. So when you think about it, we've got like land, air, and sea, which we have all of those within us. We have earth, we have air, and we have water. We also have fire, being, again, the light system within the body, the neurons, which use light in order to communicate. In fact, the synapses within neurons never touch, right? So let me just kind of showcase that to you here. Synapses never really fully touch, and they're using electromagnetic signals in order to communicate. That's exactly what's going on in your brain right now. What's going on in my brain right now is electromagnetic signals. My voice is a magnetic carrier of information. It is magnetism, it is sound. Your ears are picking up on that, converting that into an electrical pulse and sending that throughout your whole body as you're learning, as you're growing, as your mind is expanding. that is essentially what we're looking at when it comes to how we've studied different plants and what they do. The pineal gland specifically, which is the gland that is always associated with enlightenment, right? Well, this opens and closes like a flower every single day. So when people are like, open your pineal gland, you know, open your third eye, we're actually we do that every day. Your circadian rhythm, in order for your circadian rhythm to fully function, your gland actually needs to open and close. So, you know, it's like a flower though. It's very similar to a flower, which is like a lotus, which in the chakra system, they always attribute the crown chakra, the highest chakra in the brain, to a lotus flower, the crown chakra. Now, the reason why is because if you study the lotus, you'll see it actually, again, looks very similar to a human body. We have the flower as the brain. We have the fruits as the organs within the body, the buds, right? These are like the budding organelles, okay? The leaves, which are taking in the sun's light. And then you have the roots at the base with the seeds, right? And this is all very much similar to the same way that we function as human beings. The seed pod, it looks like a spleen. If you've ever seen a spleen, it looks exactly like a seed pod or like a plant, right? It looks like a pomegranate, actually, which there's always a pomegranate, or it looks like an apple, and there's always an apple, right? The spleen is a very important organ when it comes to our immune regulation, our immune health, our overall health in general. So, you know, the seeds of life, so to speak, come from the spleen. And they look very similar to flowers and budding seed pods. So at the end of the day, what do these plants do? Because or rather, what are these plants? Let's get into that a little bit. And then in the next video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what these plants actually do. So psilocybin mushrooms, okay, they've been used in many cultures for thousands of years. A big one that is philosophized, I guess you could say, would be Nordic cultures. There's like some African cultures. There's like a lot of different cultures that have presumably dabbled with mushrooms. Now, a lot of people, you know, are saying, oh, the Santa Claus story is really about magic mushrooms because magic mushrooms are, you know, red and white. These specific ones over here, not really the snow caps. Here's a couple of things. Number one, mushrooms, the mycelium network, is a very expansionary network. It's actually one of the largest living creatures that exists on our planet. And that is because mushrooms essentially act as little nodes of information. Each one of these plants contain what's called biophotons. Biophotons are electrical light impulses that contain energy. How do plants communicate? Through electrical light impulses. This is why they take in sunlight, and then they take the sunlight in from the surface, and then they bring that energy down into the earth, which then basically creates a nervous system for the earth itself. You consuming a magic mushroom is essentially you consuming a node off of the earth. Now, here's the beautiful part. The earth can actually grow more of these. Our bodies can't. So when you're consuming these magic mushrooms, what you're really doing is you're taking in the light that has been processed from the sun into the earth and back into the plant. And you're consuming that. And it is giving you information. Okay. So first and foremost, it's no surprise that this mycelium network would have the shape of a penis. These are very masculine plants. So you have to understand there's masculine and feminine plants when it comes to plant medicines. Mushrooms are obviously, based off of the shape of them, they are more of a masculine plant. Why? Because it is an electrical stimulating plant. There are some other ones that are more magnetically stimulating. That would be like ayahuasca. And I'm going to talk about that one in a second. But essentially what you're doing is you're plucking off a little node off of the Earth's nervous system and you're consuming it. And technically, this does a couple of things. One, it technically poisons you a little bit because your body's not used to processing those specific chemicals. And number two, it helps you regulate parts of your nervous system. So I'm actually going to get into what these do in the next video. But basically, psilocybin helps reconstruct a lot of, your inner nervous system. I'm going to get into the hows and the whys in a later video, maybe in tomorrow's video. But in treatment, resistant depression, psilocybin sessions and therapy has shown to help people. Okay. And the reason why is mainly because of, and this is going to be the case for almost all of the plants. The reason why is mainly because of what is called, let me pull it up here, the default mode network. Okay. So I'll keep this very simple. Our brains have a default mode network. You wake up, you make your coffee, you go to work, you pet your dog, you come home, you know, you see your wife, you play with your kids, you go to bed. And for a lot of people, especially men, they'll get stuck in a cyclical loop. This causes men to not evolve, which is why a lot of older women start to fall out of love with their men, because they don't evolve. The feminine aspect is all about evolution, which is why she's on a monthly cycle rather than a daily cycle. And the monthly cycle helps her see things from different perspectives, which assists in her evolution. Throughout the course of their lives, women often actually evolve more psychologically, mentally, you know, physically especially, than men do. Men are pretty much consistent. They are the solar equivalent. The women are the moon. They change with the times. So this is very good for men, especially men who are like military men, PTSD, survivors of trauma, etc. And then also, of course, for women who are also going through those things too, because what this does is this resets your neural network in a positive way or in a negative way. And this is where we need to take a look at things, because it's not all beauty, and it's also not doom and gloom. This is a medicine. So you have to be very responsible when it comes to using these things, because this will change your mind about things. This increases neuroplasticity, which means synaptic changes, dendritic spines. In other words, when you do things like this essence of a magic mushroom, as an example, houses a mycelium network. Okay, it understands through its biophotons, through its energy, how to make dendrites communicate better. All right, so in other words, this actually increases, if you use this properly, which this is not medical advice. Don't take anything I'm saying as medical advice. Do your own research. But this can help you create changes within your neural network, and it can also help create better connections between those synapses. Another one that we should look at is ayahuasca. The main contributing factor in ayahuasca is dimethyltryptamine, DMT, which is a form of tryptamine, just like melatonin, which is a form of tryptamine, which is made by your pineal gland. So a lot of people associate ayahuasca with the pineal gland. However, here's the inversion. Everything is inverted. Okay, so if something makes DMT to integrate with your pineal gland, it is considered a feminine plant. If something is creating other chemicals that integrate with things like your pituitary gland or your body, that is considered a masculine plant, for the reason of inversion. So ayahuasca was always seen as the great mother, the great mother substance. Okay, and what this does is this activates a lot of the specific chemicals that you need in order to restructure a lot of things within your mind. And the reason for that is because it activates parts of the thalamus that have to deal with quantum related consciousness. So it's a little complex, but basically what this does, okay, is it makes you hypersensitive, and it also, so here you can read these. A lot of this is going to be confusing. It makes you hypersensitive, okay, so it actually expands upon your body's ability to have energy. It almost gives you a burst where it wants to hyper activates all the neurons so that they spread out further, and they're trying to look for more friends. That's the way I like to say it. Like all the neurons are holding hands like friends, and that's what raises our consciousness when we can hold hands with our friends. And what this does is, again, this resets our nervous system, which is very good if you've been locked in place. However, risks, you should never, ever do plant medicines if you're on SSRIs, okay, which are the antidepressants that are always linked to different things. SSRIs actually synthetically shut off and turn on specific neural networks. And it depends on which kind of SSRI you're taking. But again, not medical advice. But I personally, when I'm talking with friends, this is, again, me not giving medical advice at all, I generally steer away from SSRIs. You probably all agree with me. If you don't, that's totally okay. But these things do more damage than plant medicines. plant medicines are not as long lasting or impactful when it comes to the permanent brain reshifting of the neurochemistry compared to SSRIs. And it's mainly because of the length. When you go and you do something like a retreat, like a spiritual retreat, they last for like 3 days, 5 days, a week maybe. SSRIs are prescribed for months at a time, and you do them every day, and they're not as powerful, but like in the moment, but they completely restructure the way people's brains work. And after you get off of them, if you ever choose to, which is really what they were initially designed for. SSRIs were initially designed for people who had extreme depression or like issues, mental issues, and they were only supposed to be given at 2 months at most at a time because of how powerful they are at restructuring the brain. Most people are on them for years these days, which causes permanent damage, and the science behind that is very clear. So you can cross fact check me on that or whatever. People who are on SSRIs for extended periods of time do not get better. In fact, they get worse. So that is the general trend that we see. They are supposed to be used in extreme cases for people in very short periods of time, 4 to 8 weeks. That is the general, from my research, from my understanding, which I am not a medical doctor. I'm not a clinical doctor. I'm a psychologist. I am a philosophical doctor. So just want to make that clear distinction. But yeah, you definitely should have a clean temple if you do decide to practice these, which I am not advocating for, by the way. I don't believe that you need. Let me talk about these last two, and then I'm going to talk about the pros and cons. San Pedro is considered more of a masculine plant, and again, it looks like a giant penis. The pillar, once again, the ayahuasca is from tree bark. Okay, so this is a little bit more feminine, right? It's like from tree bark, it's from leaves, it's from branches, and it's broken up from the tree. Whereas San Pedro is from the cactus itself. And they're cut apart, they're boiled, etc. Now, San Pedro is another very interesting one. It's considered much more of a masculine neurotropic experience. It uses mescaline, essentially, which, again, this has to do with binding to receptors. So the effects and risks, it makes you more emotionally open with a lot of hallucinogenic benefits. And it can help you with a lot of interconnected ideas, interconnected thoughts. Pharmacokinetics is another term which is really cool to kind of look into, which is like the practice or the how everything boils out, I guess you could say, when it comes to psychedelics. Sorry, my brain's, I guess, a little slow today, but this is another very interesting one. And then cannabis. Okay, so we have an endocannabinoid system within our body, and we have receptors that are already open to endocannabinoids themselves. We have the pineal gland, again, which looks like a little pine cone shape, and then you have the cannabis leaf, which also looks like a budding pineal gland, right? So this has always been considered a very spiritual plant. In fact, this is a biblical plant. It's in the Bible. It's called cannabism. And this is something that a lot of ancient Hebrews utilized. And in fact, a lot of Jewish people smoke weed today. It's actually part of a big thing for them. It's very biblical. Weed is very biblical. So, and it's also very patriarchal. I'm sorry, not patriarchal, patriotic, if you're an American, because this country was actually founded on hemp production. They'll tell you it was tobacco, but it was very much so also hemp. And a lot of our founding fathers were thought to have been smoking hemp. They were occultists. They would have known about this plant, and they probably would have smoked this plant. Yes. So essentially, the endocannabinoid system, a lot of people are like, cannabis is obviously the biggest one on this list. And cannabis is not even really a psychedelic, but it is a plant medicine. Why? Because it can help relieve a lot of issues or stress or buildup within the nervous system. Now, I don't recommend smoking weed every day. And what I'll do now is I'm going to share a little bit of my experiences, just slightly. Ayahuasca was very powerful for me specifically. And don't get anything that I say twisted. This is all my opinion. I have heard good things about each one of these plants. Ayahuasca was probably one of the better experiences that I had on psychedelics. Me specifically, I think that ayahuasca really I attribute this to a large part of my spiritual enlightenment. This would have been around 2016. I was in college. I had no idea what I was doing, and it was a very enlightening experience. Not for everybody. A lot of people don't like ayahuasca. They find it too intense. I can understand that. That's the way I felt about San Pedro. I went to Peru on a trip, and there was, a little bit of stuff that happened on that trip. We had plant medicines there. This was the one that impressed me the least. This was the one that I felt was, I had already kind of gone beyond the point of needing this. And I even talked to the person who was administering the plant medicine, and they got very defensive and said that I needed to use more, when the medicine was basically telling me through my experience and my journey that I didn't really need it at this stage in my spiritual journey. And this one was actually the most recent one that I did. So San Pedro, I think that it's great for some people, but for me personally, I felt like it was not the best experience. Not that I had a negative experience. It just wasn't worth the money or the time or really anything that I went and got involved with. I think ayahuasca was a lot more powerful, and I would recommend ayahuasca over San Pedro. Magic mushrooms, I've done these multiple times. Very fun and illuminating in many ways. Never had a bad experience with magic mushrooms, and they're always good for having deep philosophical conversations. And then finally, cannabis. I was an avid cannabis user for many years, basically smoking almost every day. Don't recommend that. I don't recommend that. It makes you lethargic. It makes you lazy. It makes you, sure, it makes you happy. It also makes you content with boredom. I find that I work a lot better. I would not probably be able to make videos every day if I was smoking cannabis regularly. Now, that being said, I still enjoy cannabis from time to time. There is now rumors that this is going to be like completely. I buy everything legal. Everything that I do is completely legal. Nothing, this is not an admitted of doing anything illegal. Everything I do, it falls under pure legal category. I go to shops that legally sell products for specific things. So none of this stuff is illegal in nature. These are all plants, right? Let's also keep that in mind too. But yeah, very interesting stuff. Cannabis, cannabis is probably one of the biggest, I would say, red flags. And the reason why is because it is so easy to abuse. And I think a lot of you guys here feel that way. And I think a lot of you guys have felt that way. Cannabis is great if you need to have a nervous system reset. Okay. If you use it every so often for a couple of months, I think that it actually, if you've never really used it before, I think it'd be greatly beneficial. In fact, I actually attribute cannabis to how I got over my parental trauma. I was smoking not every day, but a good bit in college. And that was during the time where I was fighting with my parents a lot. It made me just not care about their drama. And because I was in a mode of not giving them emotion, because I was learning how to like experience my own emotions through the use of cannabis more, I was learning, oh, I don't have to get upset. I don't have to get angry. I'm an adult. They don't have any power over me anymore. I was like 19, 20, 21, which is what they say. They recommend don't smoke cannabis when you're younger. A lot of people do. And I think that there's definitely something to say about that, where if you have easy access to it and you're young, it will definitely change your brain chemistry and structure, probably for the negative, because it saps you of motivation. Like nobody who's high wants to do anything, really. And there are some people who are like, yeah, I love to smoke and then like clean my house or whatever. That's great, but you can't write papers or books or anything like that. You can't do higher level things unless you're really microdosing cannabis. So if you want to go that route, go for it. But anybody who's using cannabis isn't microdosing. They want to get high. And I know this. Like we can't be dishonest with ourselves about this, right? So long story short, those are my experiences, my overall high level on plant medicines. If you'd like to support me, go check out my online university, go check out my AI tool. I just saw that we had somebody new sign up while I was making this video. So somebody just signed up for the core package. You can check out all the information on the website. But I will be making more videos on this to come. This is just the intro, and I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.